The Vora Empire had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They had conquered over 2,000 worlds and made slaves of every species they found. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever come close. Queen Zevira sat on her throne, made of black metal, and watched her empire grow. She was old, older than any human could imagine. She had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had crushed rebellions on 100 planets. Nothing surprised her anymore. Nothing scared her when her scouts found Earth. She barely looked at the reports. The creatures living there were small and soft. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no armor, no venom. They killed each other with primitive machines and fought wars over pieces of land. Queen ordered the invasion and went back to her other business. The Varathi War fleet arrived on a Tuesday morning. Their ships blocked out the sun over every major city. Their weapons turned military bases into smoking craters. Their soldiers dropped from the sky in pods that crashed through buildings like stones through paper. The humans fought back. Of course they did. Every species fought back at first. The Vira expected this. They had seen it all before, but the fighting was over quickly. Human tanks and planes were no match for Vira technology. Human bullets bounced off Varathi armor. Human soldiers died by the thousands, while Vira soldiers barely noticed the resistance. Within 3 days, Earth belonged to the Empire. Danny Cole watched the invasion from his ranch in Montana. He stood on his porch with a rifle in his hands and watched the alien ships fly overhead. He was 43 years old. His hair was going gray. His face was covered in scars from wars. He had fought in places most Americans could not find on a map. Danny had been in Army Ranger for 15 years. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq. He had seen things that still woke him up at night. He had killed men and watched his friends die. When he finally came home, he thought he was done with war forever. His wife Linda had been waiting for him. She had kept the ranch running while he was gone. She had raised their daughter Katie almost by herself. She had never complained, not once. Danny had promised her he would never leave again. Linda died 2 years later, cancer. Danny held her hand at the end and told her he loved her. Then he buried her on the hill behind the ranch, where she used to watch the sunset. Now he stood alone on that same porch, watching aliens conquer his world. His daughter Katie came out and stood beside him. She was 19 years old, tall and strong, with her mother's eyes in her father's stubborn jaw. "What do we do?" she asked. Danny watched a Varathi patrol ship scan the valley below. He could see the alien soldiers inside, 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. They moved like predators, smooth and fast and deadly. "We survive," Danny said, "and then we fight." The next morning, Danny gathered everyone who was left. There were 17 people in all. Some were neighbors he had known for years. Others were strangers who had fled the cities when the bombs fell. They were farmers and teachers and store clerks. None of them were soldiers. Danny looked at their faces and saw fear. He understood. He had felt that same fear in his first firefight 20 years ago in a dusty village on the other side of the world. But he had learned something in that village. Fear was not the enemy. Giving up was the enemy. The aliens think we are weak, Danny said. They think we will kneel and serve them like all the other species they have conquered. They are wrong. He pointed to the mountains behind the ranch. My grandfather showed me caves up there. When I was a boy, they go deep into the rock. The aliens will not find us there. We will hide, we will plan. And when we are ready, we will make them pay for every drop of human blood they have spilled. Pete Dawson stepped forward. He was a thin man with glasses and a nervous smile. He had been a chemistry teacher at the high school in town. Before the invasion, I want to help, Pete said, but I am not a fighter. I have never even held a gun. Danny put a hand on his shoulder. Can you make explosives? Pete blinked. Yes, I know the chemistry, fertilizer, fuel, oil, basic compounds. It would not be hard. Then you are exactly what we need. An old woman named Ruth Blackwood pushed through the small crowd. She was 72 years old with white hair and hands that shook slightly when she moved, but her eyes were sharp and clear. I was a nurse in Korea, Ruth said. I have seen war before. I can patch up wounds and set bones. I can keep people alive. Danny nodded. Good, we will need that too. Katie stepped up beside her father. And I can shoot. Dad taught me when I was 12. I have not missed a target in years. Danny looked at his daughter and felt his heart break a little. He had hoped she would never have to fight. He had hoped she would live a peaceful life, far from the violence that had shaped his own, but the universe had other plans. All right, he said, let us go. They climbed into the mountains. That afternoon, Danny led them through paths he remembered from his childhood, trails that did not show on any map. Caves were exactly where his grandfather had said they would be, hidden behind a waterfall that crashed down from the peaks above. Inside, the cave spread out into a network of tunnels and chambers. There was fresh water from underground streams. There were openings that let in light and air. It was cold and dark and uncomfortable, but it was safe. Danny stood at the entrance and looked down at the valley below. He could see Varathi patrols moving through the ruins of the town. He could see their ships scanning the forests and fields. They were looking for survivors. They were looking for slaves. They would not find Danny Cole, not until he was ready to be found. That night, Danny began to teach his small group everything he knew about war. He taught them how to move without being seen. He taught them how to set traps and ambushes. He taught them how to kill quickly and quietly, using nothing but their hands and simple tools. The Viera had conquered 1,000 worlds with their advanced technology and their superior strength. They had never faced an enemy like Danny Cole. They had never faced a species that had been killing each other for 10,000 years, perfecting the art of war with every generation. They were about to learn what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. 3 months passed. The Viera thought the conquest of Earth was complete. They were wrong. Sublord Kralum was the commander in charge of the Montana region. He was young for a Horathi officer, only 400 years old. He had won his rank through brutal efficiency. He had pacified 12 worlds before Earth. He expected this assignment to be easy. The first patrol disappeared on a cold night. In October, 6 Vathai warriors went into the mountains to search for survivors. They never came back. Krathalum sent a search party to find them. They found the bodies at the bottom of a cliff. Their armor cracked open, their weapons missing. Kralum told himself it was an accident. The terrain was dangerous. Warriors had made a mistake. It would not happen again. thought it happened. Again, a supply convoy was moving through a narrow pass when the road exploded beneath them. The blast killed 4 warriors instantly. The survivors stumbled out of their burning vehicles and looked for the enemy. They saw nothing but rocks and trees and empty sky. Then arrows began to fall from above, tipped with something that burned through their armor like acid. When the attack was over, 12 Vathi were dead. The supplies were gone. There was no trace of the attackers. Danny Cole watched from a ridge half a mile away. He lowered his binoculars and allowed himself a small smile. The trap had worked perfectly. Pete Dawson's explosives had done their job. The poison Ruth Blackwood had made from plants in the forest had done the rest. "We should move," Katie said beside him. She was carrying a rifle she had taken from a dead Vathi warrior. She had learned to fire it in 2 days. "They will send more," Danny nodded. "Let them come." The Vera did come. Kravalum sent 50 warriors into the mountains with orders to find the attackers and destroy them. The warriors marched in neat formations, their weapons ready, their sensors scanning for any sign of life. They found nothing. The mountains were silent. The forests were empty. The warriors began to relax. Perhaps the attacks had been random. Perhaps there was nothing to fear. Then the first warrior fell. He was walking at the back of the formation when something pulled him into the shadows. His companions heard a brief struggle, then silence. When they turned to look, he was gone. Only a pool of green blood remained on the ground, but the warriors formed a defensive circle. They pointed their weapons in every direction. They called for their missing companion. No answer came. Another warrior fell, then another, then another. Panic spread through the formation. These were soldiers who had conquered worlds, who had never known defeat. Now they were dying in the darkness, killed by an enemy they could not see. By morning, only 3 warriors remained. They stumbled out of the mountains, their armor stained with blood, their eyes wide with terror. They told Crown that a demon lived in those peaks, creature that moved like smoke and killed like lightning, a ghost craft. Volume executed them for cowardice. Then he sat alone in his command center and wondered what he was fighting. Danny Cole was not a demon. He was just a man who understood something the Vera did. War was not about superior weapons or greater numbers. War was about will. It was about making the enemy afraid to close their eyes at night. It was about breaking their spirit before you broke their bodies. The attacks continued. Every week brought new disasters for the Vathi. Patrols vanished. Outposts burned. Officers were found dead in their beds, killed by blades that left no energy signature because they were made of simple steel. Danny trained his people well. Katie became the best sniper in the group. She could hit a target at 600 YD even in the wind. She never missed. She never hesitated. Danny tried not to think about what this war was turning his daughter into. Pete Dawson built bombs from anything he could find. Fertilizer, cleaning chemicals, old batteries. He was a genius with explosives, able to create devices that fooled Varith sensors and detonated with devastating force. Ruth Blackwood kept them alive. She treated wounds with supplies stolen from Vera medical stations. She made medicines from plants and tree bark. She held the hands of the dying and whispered comfort to them in their final moments. Others joined the resistance. survivors who heard rumors of the ghost. In the mountains, escaped prisoners who had nothing left to lose, soldiers from other countries who had made their way across the ruined continent. Danny welcomed them all. By the end of the third month, Danny had over 100 fighters under his command. They were scattered across the mountains in small groups, striking at the Varathi and disappearing before anyone could strike back. Crathalam sent 500 warriors to sweep the mountains. It was the largest operation he had ever commanded. He was certain it would end the resistance once and for all. Danny was waiting for them. The Vaith advanced in a wide line, their weapons ready. They moved slowly, checking every shadow, every rock, every tree. They would not be surprised again. They were surprised anyway. The first explosion took out 30 warriors. The second took out 20 more. Then the arrows came, then the bullets, then the screams. The Vora fired back at shadows that seemed to move on their own. They hit nothing but air. Danny moved through the battle like water through stone. He appeared behind a warrior, drove his knife into the gap between armor plates and vanished before the body hit the ground. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. Katie lay on a ridge above the valley, her rifle steady in her hands. She fired once, twice, 3 times. Each shot found its mark. Each shot ended a life. She did not think about what she was doing. She could not afford to think. Battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 412 warriors were dead. Danny had lost 11 of his own people. He buried them in the mountains they had died defending and said a prayer over their graves. Crathalam received the report in silence. His hands were shaking. He had never failed like this before. He had never lost so many warriors to such a small enemy. That night he sent a message to Queen Zala. He told her about the ghost in the mountains. He told her about an enemy that could not be killed, that struck without warning and disappeared like smoke. He asked for reinforcements. The queen read his message and felt something stir in her ancient heart. It was not fear, not yet, but it was the beginning of something she had not felt in a very long time. It was curiosity. The announcement came on a cold morning. In the station's artificial cycle, Verth gathered her team in the main laboratory, her scale shimmering with an excited golden color that Danny had never seen before. We have received approval for a field expedition, she announced. The Science Council has granted us access to Verse 7. We leave in 3 days. The other researchers reacted with enthusiasm. Even the normally calm Nefkin pulsed with brighter light. Verith 7 was famous among xenobiologists. It was a jungle moon with one of the most diverse ecosystems in the known galaxy. Thousands of species lived there, many of them still unknown to science. Getting permission to study there was a great honor. Danny knew about Verith 72, but for different reasons. He had studied the moon during his training with the operations division. It was classified as extremely dangerous. The jungle was filled with predators, poisonous plants, and environmental hazards. Several research teams had disappeared there over the years. Urath turned to look at Danny, and her scales shifted back to that familiar gray. The human will come with us, she said. He can carry the heavy equipment. Perhaps manual labor is better suited to his abilities than actual science. Cathros and Yulani, the 2 junior Salenti researchers laughed at this. Grom the Brevari said nothing, but Danny noticed that the technician's ears rotated slightly, a sign of discomfort. Danny just nodded. I will do whatever helps the team, ma'am. 3 days later, they boarded a small shuttle and began the journey to Very 7. The moon grew larger in the viewport, a green and blue sphere wrapped in clouds. Even from space, Danny could see the massive forest that covered most of its surface. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere and the jungle came into view. The trees were enormous, taller than any building Danny had seen on Earth. Their bark glowed with soft, bioluminescent light, creating a strange and beautiful landscape. Vines thick as cables hung between the branches and strange flying creatures moved through the canopy. They landed in a small clearing that had been used by previous expeditions. The shuttle's doors opened and the smell of the jungle hit Danny immediately. It was thick and wet, filled with the scent of growing things in decay. The air was warm and humid, making his uniform stick to his skin. Vereth stepped out first. Followed by her team, she held a scanner in 2 of her hands while her other 2 hands adjusted her equipment belt. Everyone stay alert, she said. Vera 7 is home to many dangerous creatures. We will work quickly and return to the shuttle before nightfall. Danny was the last one out. He carried 3 large cases of equipment on his back, more weight than any of the aliens could handle, but humans had evolved on a world with stronger gravity than most species could tolerate. What was heavy for a Salante was merely uncomfortable for him. As they moved into the jungle, Danny automatically began assessing his surroundings. He noted the paths between the trees, the areas with good visibility, and the places where predators might hide. He identified 3 different escape routes back to the shuttle. He counted the steps and measured the distances. These were old habits from his military days. A good soldier always knew his environment. Good soldier always had a plan. The team walked for about an hour, stopping frequently to collect samples and record observations. Varric explained what they were looking for to her Salante juniors, completely ignoring Danny as usual. Grom worked quietly, managing the data systems with professional efficiency. The Nefkin had stayed behind at the shuttle as their gaseous bodies did not handle humid environments. While Danny watched and listened to everything, he noticed how the local wildlife reacted to their presence. Small creatures fled at their approach, which was normal, but gradually he realized that even the larger animals were moving away from them. The jungle was becoming quieter. That was not normal. That was a sign of something dangerous nearby. He was about to say something when Grom spoke first. The Beavard's large ears were rotating rapidly, turning in every direction like radar dishes. Senior researcher Grom said in a low voice, I believe we are being followed. Varric stopped walking. Her scales began to shift toward a pale yellow color. What do you mean? Something is watching us. Multiple creatures moving through the trees. Grom's ears stopped rotating and pointed in one direction. There and over there. Danny set down the equipment cases slowly, keeping his movements calm. He had already spotted what Grom was sensing: shadows in the underbrush, too large and too still to be harmless. Varric has pulled out her scanner and activated it. Her scales went completely pale, almost white. Kefshari, she whispered, 5 of them. They have surrounded us. Cathros made a sound of pure terror. Yulani began to shake, her forearms wrapped around herself. Even Grom, who was larger and stronger than the others, looked afraid. Danny understood their fear. He had studied the Kefshari during his journey to the station. They were apex predators, the most dangerous hunting species on verse 7. Each one was about 8 ft long with 6 legs, thick scales, and a mouthful of teeth designed to tear through armor. They had special organs that could see heat, making it impossible to hide from them. Their claws contained venom that paralyzed victims within seconds. A single Keshari could kill an armed soldier. 5 of them, working together as a pack, could take down almost anything. Everyone remained calm, Viricus said, though her voice was shaking. If we move slowly toward the shuttle, perhaps they will not attack. Kefari prefer to avoid confrontation when possible, but Danny could see that it was already too late for that. The pack had been following them for some time, studying them, learning their patterns. They had waited until the team was far from the shuttle and surrounded on all sides. This was not random hunting behavior. This was a coordinated attack. One of the shadows in the undergrowth moved, then another. The creatures were getting closer, tightening the circle. They are not going to let us leave, Danny said quietly. Virix turned to look at him, and for the first time there was no contempt in her expression, only fear. What do we do? Before Danny could answer, the jungle exploded into motion. The largest KTH Sherry burst from the vegetation directly ahead of them. It was massive, nearly 9 ft of muscle and scales and killing intent. Its mouth opened wide, revealing rows of teeth. Like broken glass, it let out a sound that was half roar and half hiss. Challenge to anything that dared to stand in its way, Kethro screamed. Yulani collapsed to the ground, paralyzed with terror. Groan grabbed a piece of equipment and held it up like a weapon, though everyone knew it would do nothing against such a creature. The Kathari charged and Danny Cole stepped directly into its path. He moved without thinking, years of training taking over his body. He grabbed a fallen branch from the ground, a thick piece of wood, about 3 feet long. It was not much of a weapon. Against a Kathshari it was almost nothing, but Danny did not need a weapon. He needed something else entirely. He planted his feet in the soft earth, raised the branch, and faced the charging predator. Everyone get behind me, he said. His voice had changed. It was no longer the quiet, respectful tone of a trainee. This was the voice of command, hard and absolute. Now the alien scrambled to obey, too frightened to question him. The Kefari saw this strange behavior and slowed its charge, confused. Prey was supposed to run. Prey was not supposed to stand and fight. Danny looked into the creature's eyes and did not look away. Doubt, everything he had learned, everything he had survived, everything that made him human came together in that single moment. The real confrontation was about to begin. The shuttle ride back to Helix 9 felt longer than the journey to Varith 7. No one spoke during the first hour. The team sat in their seats and stared at nothing, each one trying to understand what they had witnessed. Danny sat at the back of the shuttle looking out the small window at the stars. He knew that others were watching him. He could feel their eyes on his back, but he did not turn around. He gave them the space they needed to process what had happened. Dot, it was Verikith who finally broke. To silence, how did you do that, Dany? Turned to face her, her scales had settled into a deep blue color. Something he had never seen before. He did not know what it meant, but her voice was different now. The contempt was gone. In its place was something that sounded almost like respect. Do what, ma'am? Do not call me ma'am. She shook her head, her neck frills fluttering with frustration. And do not pretend to be the humble trainee. I watched you face 5 apex predators. With nothing but a stick, I watched them back down. I watched them submit to you. She leaned forward in her seat. How? Dany was quiet for a moment. He could lie. He could make up some story about special training or secret technology. But something in Verikith's expression told him she deserved the truth. Humans evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill us. He said we were not the fastest animals or the strongest. We had no claws, no fangs, no venom. By all logic, we should have died out millions of years ago, but you did not. No, we did not. Dany turned to look at the stars again. We survived because we refused to give up. We learned to work together, to make tools, to think ahead. But most importantly, we learned to be dangerous enough that other predators thought twice before attacking us. Grom spoke up from his seat. I read about human persistence hunting during my studies. Your ancestors would chase prey across vast distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. No other species does that. Dany nodded. We are not fast, but we can run forever. We cannot fly, but we learned to build machines that could. We are weak alone, but together we conquered our entire planet. He paused. And then we came to the stars, but they Kevshari are perfect hunters, Cathro said. His voice was still shaky from fear. They've been apex predators for millions of years. No predator is perfect, Dany replied. They are optimized for efficiency. They want meals that do not fight back. They want prey that runs and screams and makes itself easy to catch. He turned to look at the young Salante. The moment you show them that you are not easy prey, they start to reconsider, and you showed them that. I showed them that attacking me would cost them something. Maybe I would hurt one of them. Maybe I would kill one before they killed me. That is not a trade any smart predator wants to make. Verikith was quiet for a long time. Her scanner was still in her hands, displaying the readings she had taken during the confrontation. Your vital signs were abnormal, she said finally. When most species face mortal danger, their bodies enter a state of panic. Heart rate spikes, stress hormones flood the system, higher brain function shut down. That happened to me too. No, it did not. She held up the scanner. Your heart rate increased, but it was controlled. Your stress hormones were elevated, but they were balanced with other chemicals that enhanced your focus and aggression. Your brain activity showed intense concentration, not panic. She lowered the scanner. Your body was not preparing to die. It was preparing to fight. Dany smiled slightly. Humans call it the fight or flight response. Most animals only have the flight option. We have both, and you chose to fight. I chose to make them think I would fight. There's a difference. Shuttle fell silent again. Outside the window, Helix 9 appeared in the distance, a massive structure of metal and light floating in the darkness of space. Thought it was Yulani who spoke next. She had been quiet since the jungle, barely moving from her seat, but Now she looked at Danny with something new in her large dark eyes. Were you ever afraid? She asked, thought Danny. Considered the question carefully. Yes, he said finally, I was afraid. The whole time, but you did not show it. Showing fear tells a predator that you have already given up. It tells them they have won before the fight begins. Danny shook his head. I was afraid, but I did not let the fear control me. I used it instead. Fear kept me alert. Fear kept me focused. Fear reminded me what was at stake. Your life, Yulani said. Not just mine. Danny looked at each member of the team in turn. All of yours. If those Cathari had attacked, they would have killed everyone. I could not let that happen. Why? Varric asked. We have treated you badly since you arrived. We mocked you. We belittled you. We gave you the worst jobs and laughed at your mistakes. Why would you risk your life to protect us? Danny thought about the question. It was a good one. By all logic, he should have resented the people who had made his life miserable for weeks. He should have been happy to let them face the consequences of their arrogance, but that was not how humans worked. Where I come from, he said, we have a saying. You do not have to like someone to protect them, you just have to decide they are worth protecting. He shrugged. I decided. Brahm made a sound that might have been a laugh. The bravery have a similar saying. Never judge a warrior by how they treat their friends, judge them by how they treat their enemies. And how do humans treat their enemies? Varric asked. Danny and LT Hunk and GT. Wise expression did not change, but something in his eyes became harder. That depends on the enemy. The shuttle docked with Helix 9 an hour later. The team gathered their equipment and prepared to disembark, but before Danny could leave, Verth stopped him with a gentle touch on his arm. I owe you my life, she said. I owe you the lives of my entire team. You do not owe me anything. Yes, I do. Her scale shifted to that deep blue color again. I owe you an apology. I treated you unfairly because I thought I knew what humans were. I was wrong. Danny nodded slowly. Apology accepted. I would like to start over. Ver continued, not as supervisor and trainee, but as colleagues. I believe I have much to learn from you. For the first time since the jungle. Danny smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. I would like that too. They walked off the shuttle together. Two very different species who had found something unexpected in each other. Behind them, the rest of the team followed, still processing what they had learned about the quiet human who had been carrying their equipment for weeks. The universe was a big place full of wonders and dangers that most species could not imagine. But somewhere in that vast emptiness was a small blue planet where a species of former prey animals had learned to become the most dangerous creatures in their world. And now those creatures were spreading to the stars. The story of what happened on Varys 7 spread through Helix 9 like fire through dry grass. Grom told his friends in the security division. Those friends told others. Within a week, everyone on the station had heard some version of the tale. The details changed with each telling. In some versions, Danny had killed 3 Cathy with his bare hands. In others, he had wrestled the pack leader into submission, but the core of the story remained the same. A human trainee had faced apex predators and made them run away. Danny noticed the change immediately. Aliens who had ignored him for months now watched him. When he walked past Bravari security, Guards hardened mercenaries who feared. Nothing began nodding to him in the corridors, even the floating Methim who rarely showed interest in solid beings, would drift closer when he was working. In the laboratory, he was no longer invisible, he was no longer a joke. 3 weeks after the expedition, Verth called him into her office. The room was small and filled with research equipment. Holographic displays showing data from a dozen different projects. She was standing by the window looking out at the stars. "Sit down," she said. Her voice was different now, warmer and more relaxed. They had been working together as equals since their return, and the chain suited them both. Danny sat in the chair across from her desk. "Is something wrong?" "No, something is right." She turned to face him. Her scale is a calm shade of silver. "I have been reading about Earth, about your species. That explains why you have been looking at me strangely." Very almost smiled. "Almost. Your home world is terrifying, Danny. I do not know how you survive there." "Neither do we sometimes." She pulled up a holographic display. Images appeared in the air between them. Tigers prowling through tall grass, great white sharks cutting through dark water, wolves hunting in packs across frozen landscapes. 70% of your planet is covered with water. That would kill most oxygen-breathing species. Varric said, "Your continents are unstable, moving and colliding with each other over time. Your climate shifts between extremes that would destroy most ecosystems. And these creatures," she gestured at the images, "these are just a few of the predators you shared your world with. We call them wildlife. Some people keep smaller versions as pets." Virica stared at him. "You keep predators as pets. Dogs are descended from wolves. Cats are descended from small hunters. We domesticated them thousands of years ago." Danny shrugged. "They are family now." She shook her head slowly, her neck frills expressing emotions. Danny was only beginning to understand. "My species evolved on a calm world with stable climate and few natural dangers. We became scientists and philosophers because we had the luxury of time and safety. We never had to fight for survival the way your people did. That is not a bad thing." Danny said, "You built a peaceful civilization. You contributed knowledge and art to the galaxy. Those are achievements worth celebrating perhaps, but we never developed the instincts your species has." She closed the holographic display. "We never learned to look at death and refused to surrender." Danny was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something? Something I have never told anyone on this station, of course. Back on Earth, I was a soldier. I fought in 3 wars. Before I was 25 years old, I have seen things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life." He looked at his hands, remembering the weight of weapons, the feel of blood. "I came to space because I wanted to leave that behind. I wanted to be a scientist, a researcher, someone who built things instead of destroying them." Very listened without interrupting. "When those Cathshari surrounded us, every instinct I had tried to bury came back. The soldier I used to be took over." Danny looked up at her. "I do not know if that makes me brave or broken." "It makes you human," Virica said simply. "Your species carries its history in its bones. The wars, the hunts, the endless struggle to survive. You cannot escape what you are, any more than I can escape being Salenti. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It is supposed to help you Understand, she leaned forward, what you did on verse 7 saved our lives. Instincts you tried to bury are the reason we are all still breathing. That is not something to be ashamed of. Danny nodded slowly. He did not know if he agreed with her, but he appreciated the effort. Later that day, he went to the observation deck. It was his favorite place on the station, a large room with windows that looked out at the endless ocean of stars. He stood there alone, watching ships come and go, thinking about everything that had happened. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Grom approaching. The Brevari had 2 cups of some kind of hot drink in his hands. He offered one to Danny. What is this? Danny asked. A Brevari beverage called CR. It is warm and bitter, similar to what I believe you call coffee. Danny took a sip. It was indeed bitter but not unpleasant. Thank you. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Finally, Grom spoke. The Brevari have a saying. The most dangerous warrior is not the one who seeks battle, it is the one who wishes for peace but is willing to fight when necessary. Danny smiled slightly. My people have a similar saying. Speak softly and carry a big stick. What does that mean? It means be kind and polite, but make sure everyone knows you can defend yourself if you need to. Grom made his rumbling laugh sound. I think our species would get along well, Danny. Cole, I think so too. They finished their drinks as the station rotated slowly in space, giving them a view of a distant nebula painted in shades of purple and gold. Somewhere in that vast universe, humans were spreading outward from their small blue planet. They were building colonies, making alliances, and slowly proving that they belonged among the stars. The galaxy still saw them as newcomers. Many species still dismissed them as primitives who had stumbled into space by accident, but that was changing. One encounter at a time, one story at a time, one human at a time. Due thought about the research team that had once mocked him. Varric was now a respected colleague. Cathros and Yulani treated him with the same courtesy they showed everyone else. Even the Nefkin had started including him in their strain floating conversations. None of them would ever look at humans the same way again. They had seen what lay beneath the surface of the quiet trainee. They had glimpsed the predator hiding inside the peaceful scientist, and they would tell others. The story would spread and more aliens would learn the truth about humanity. They would learn that humans were not primitive or weak or simple. They would learn that underestimating a human was a dangerous mistake. Danny finished his drink and set the cup aside. Tomorrow there would be more work, more research, more chances to learn and grow. The universe was vast and full of mysteries waiting to be discovered, but for now he was content to stand here and watch the stars. He was a soldier who had become a scientist. He was a predator who had chosen peace. He was a human being with all the complexity and contradiction that implied and that Danny Cole knew was something the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The stars burned bright in the darkness, ancient and endless and full of possibility. Humanity was out there now, walking among them. They were small and young and still had so much to learn, but they were also stubborn and brave and absolutely refused to give up, just like they had always been, just like they would always be.